In this video, we'll take a look at default settings in DesignerLogic. When you create your account, it's going to automatically populate a number of lookup lists for you so you don't have to start from scratch. Now you can edit those lists from the admin menu, choose default settings. Here you're going to see a number of different choices. At the top, you just click on a link to go to that particular choice. It opens with the sales codes. Sales codes are essentially categories for items and time charges. Now, categories for items can be anything from physical things like countertop, artwork, appliances, but they can also be things like design fees, freight, labor, things like that that are not necessarily physical. These are essentially just ways to categorize your items. You can also set default markups for different categories. For example, these accessories mark up 30%. This bedding marks up 40%. You can add or edit any of these things as you'd like. And the tax section will automatically include proposals and invoices to the client tax if it's artwork and not do it if it's on a purchase order. And you can also make sales codes inactive if you want. Now you can select different sales codes and delete them. You can add new ones if you want to get really granular. You can have as many as you'd like or as few as you want. Now, item or account items, this is if you are exporting to QuickBooks and you use different item names in QuickBooks for the line items. So you can have, for example, furniture right here is going to, whenever exported, is going to go under physical goods in QuickBooks. So this is a way to customize that list. Now we have a QuickBooks export video with more detail on that specifically. If you want to edit multiple sales codes at the same time, like for example, change the markups, you can select them and click on the edit link up here and then just edit these how you'd like. You can also individually edit by clicking the little pencil icon over here. Now, where these show up, these choices for these sales codes are when you create an item on a project. So we're going to go over to a project and you can see this big sort of spreadsheet view. And here you can see the sales codes are listed out right here under the item number. Now when you make a new item from scratch on a project and you click new here, this opens up the new item form, and here you can see that list of sales codes is right here. So everything in that big list is going to show up here as a choice. Now when you make an item, you can add a new sales code on the fly by just clicking new, type in the sales code here that you want to, and that will show up afterwards in this big list over here. So it's a very quick way to add new sales codes. You can also add a new sales code from the main list just by starting here and typing directly in. The other kind of sales codes are time and expense sales codes. Now these sales codes are not for items specifically, but they are for time billing and expense billing. And so again, any sales code is essentially a category, and you start with some standard ones in DesignerLogic when you sign up, and you have these rates over here that are defaults, and you can always change the rates as you work, but these are just defaults. So every time you choose CAD work, it's going to start with $150. Now you can edit that by clicking the little edit button if you want to change the rates right here. Now where this shows up is over here. We'll go to the time tracking section and time and expense section. And here you have all the time logs and expense logs on all of your projects. Now when you click to add a new time or expense log, the sales code shows up right here as a choice, and when you click on it, you can see down here it will change the billing rate based on the sales code. Now you can overwrite that if you'd like to, and if you choose to do an expense log, you can see that the expenses come from that sales code list and the default charge as well as down here. That all comes from the sales code list that we were on over in the default settings section, which is right here. Spec templates are default settings that allow you to have prompts to put in specs. For example, this area rug has a number of different kinds of specs that you need to fill. Down here, the bath accessories have a number of spec prompts that you need to fill. And you can edit these by clicking on this icon right here. And you can remove or add different prompts as you need for these specs. Now where these specs show up, this is just a way basically to autofill what you're supposed to fill out for a new item. So if we go back to that new item on that project where we're filling out all this information on the item, and we go down here and we want to fill out the specs for ordering, which is this big box, and this can be as much information as you'd like. We just want to choose what spec we want to what spec template, and it will autofill that. So then we now know just to fill out this information. So this is a really good way to keep from forgetting to put in specific information on an item. Now back over in the default settings, we also have an areas list. And the areas list is just sort of a generic list of areas for every new project that you create. So an area on a project looks like this. We'll go to the specific projects dashboard. And here we have the areas tab. And you'll see all the areas for this project. Now this project might have its own unique area. It might have something like Mike's wine room or something like that that's not on every other project. So you would not want that on this generic list. You can add it to this specific project by coming up to the Edit Add, choose Area, and here you can add a new area to this specific project. Now when you add a new area to the specific project, it will not update it on this overall generic list, and it will not go backwards and add anything. If you add a new area to this list by clicking the New button, you can type in a new area, and it will add it to this overall list, but it will not add it backwards to other old projects, only going forward to new projects. Now, when you're also on a new item for that project, just like the sales code, you can see you select the area from that projects area list to go in here, and if you don't have it in your list, you can type new on the fly and just add a new area in directly, very quickly. Now back on the default settings, if you click on tax rates, you can see that you can work in multiple tax rates from multiple counties in the United States. You can have things like GST in Australia. You can have VAT tax in other countries. Just fill out the tax description right here, and then the tax rate. Fill that out right there and choose whether to use that on purchase orders and invoices, and just select these options right here. And then when you make a new project, you can update the tax setting. I'll show you right here. We go to add a new project. And down here we have our tax settings from that list. So you can see we can choose Fulton County, Georgia, and it updates the tax rate right there. And that comes from these default settings over here. The unit types is self-explanatory. You can work in metrics. You can work in anything kind of unit definition that you'd like to. Just type it in, edit it, or delete the ones you don't want. Now, terms and conditions, these are what shows up at the bottom of a proposal, invoice, and purchase order. Now, DesignerLogic will automatically put in some information for you when you sign up, but if you have your own specific language you want to put at the end of these transactions, just click on this edit link, and here you can see you can adjust all these transaction footers right here to your liking with your own language. And that's how you use default settings in DesignerLogic.